let's take it to Detroit. I mean, this is a huge game in Green Bay, right? The elements at play. Detroit has not left a artificial turf environment all season. Everyone's talking about the rain in Lambeau. Everyone's talking about the playing surface in Lambeau, the cleats being shifted up. I mean, Dan Campbell said it. What's the most important factor of this game? The shoes you wear. And Detroit came out, and Richard, I'm a Detroiter. I'm fired up. You're going to have to talk me off this pedestal that I'm on. When I look at the Detroit Lions, I see a Super Bowl team. And maybe I'm nuts, but when you go on the road in your division, and we've talked about this the last couple of weeks, these divisional games are so crucial, right? They're so crucial that they make or break teams. And Detroit just was whomping on Green Bay. 24-3 at half. I know they didn't score after the first half, but Richard, I got to know, like, where's your head at with this Detroit Lions team? Because I could talk and talk and talk and talk forever about how positive I feel about this Lions team. Where's your head at?
I think they're an incredible team. I think they're one of the best teams, obviously the best team in the NFC. I have questions about long term and defensive. I think they have to make a move for a pass rusher.
No
I've
question.
heard they're in the market for Zadarius Smith and a number of other guys who could really help. Now you get one of those guys, to help put some more pressure on these quarterbacks. Then I'm all on board with you, Mitchell, because that's the thing. When you get into the playoffs, you get into these tight ball games. Who can get to the quarterback? Who can get to the quarterback successfully? You have a really talented secondary, but nobody can cover forever. So if guys get more time, you start to find holes in zones. You start to find holes. But right now, they're doing a phenomenal job. They held Jordan Love to 273 yards, 23 of 39. He got some garbage time yards in there. So we're not going to count all that. Josh Jacobs was ever able to have some success on the ground, 13 carries for 95 yards. But I thought Kirby Joseph's interception was an incredible play. I mean, to just be in the right place at the right time, to take your time, to not overrush, to have an awareness of where you are. We just talked about what they did to Brian Branch, which was a ridiculous, ridiculous abuse of power in the National Football League to kick a player out in the game for nothing egregious, nothing. He didn't do it on purpose. He didn't do anything that you would say, oh man, that was a dirty play. It was a football play, and if it's a football play, I don't like football players getting ejected for it, and that's something that has to be reviewed from New York or talked about, because if you do that in a playoff game to an All Pro or Pro Bowl player, who can have a drastic effect on the game, it's too much gambling going on. It's too much at stake in these ball games where people would start to say, hey man, they're starting to cheat. They're starting to cheat. I mean, defense, you always feel like you're getting cheated, but I mean, that kind of play, you're making it impossible. So you're saying, hey, just let the guys catch the ball, because if they start taking guys' legs out and they start landing on their heads and breaking their necks and things like that, then it's going to be a whole different issue. So they're trying to hit guys in the chest. And you saw Kobe Bryant had a great play against the Rams where he hit the guy right in the chest, but his helmet hit the other guy's helmet a little bit. But if you find a way for a guy to lead his body without his head, then I'd be all ears. But when I sat in the competition committee meetings and they had these conversations, I said, hey, I want all you guys who are making these rules, I want you to walk towards the wall. And I want you to walk towards it, and I want you to do it with your head back. And they couldn't do it, Mitchell. They were stumbling. They were falling. I said, okay, now lean your head forward and walk wherever what direction you want to go in. And they realized, hey, you're led by your head. No matter to run full speed, your head's going to be at the forefront. So if you're talking about striking somebody, you put a foot in the ground, you put your shoulder out front, but I'm leaning my shoulder in, my head's going to look at this, Mitchell. You measure it, my head, my shoulder. It's going to hit damn near the same time, or my head's going to go first. So some of the things people say, like, oh, he's leading with his head, like, get the head out the game. You can't, unless you tell these guys to stop leading their body. And that's the part of the game I hate. But this Lions team looks phenomenal. Their coaching looks good. Even when they face some adversity, they're overcoming it really quickly. They got a tough game against the Houston Texans next week, who we just saw on TNF. It's in Houston. I think they're a frustrated team. They're beat up at the receiver position. They're supposed to be getting Nico Collins back off the hamstring injury, so I'm looking forward to that game. But right now, there are very few teams that can consider themselves better than the Detroit Lions right now.
There's, and I appreciate you saying that, Richard. Let's talk a little bit about Jared Goff before we turn the page on this Detroit Lion team, because his last two games on paper have looked underwhelming. I mean, what do you have? 83 passing yards and a 52-10 or 52-14 win against the Titans. Now 145 passing yards against these Green Bay Packers. But then you look at the fact that this guy, his completion percentage is off the charts, Richard. Where do you put him? I mean, I know Lamar Jackson's been having a hell of a year, but is he a realistic MVP candidate right now, the way he's playing football for this Detroit Lion football team?
If you're just looking at the efficiency numbers, Mitchell, you got to give him at least a fair look because it's ridiculous. I mean, he's breaking records left and right. Um, he's been so efficient, not turning the ball over at a high rate. Um, but then you start to look at the overall numbers, and he's just not throwing for very many yards. I think he's 14th right now in yards. He's ninth in touchdowns. And those numbers for an MVP just aren't going to get it done. And we talked about this last year when we were talking about Lamar Jackson, where his numbers stacked up in the National Football League, and I wasn't feeling it. But this year, it's totally different. He looks like his 2019 MVP season. So if he's having a year like that, Josh Allen's also having a phenomenal year where he's throwing for 2,000 yards and he's got 17 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, both coming in the last 2 weeks. They're winning ball games. They're 7-2 right now, and so Lamar Jackson's number one in the league in passing yards. I think he's number one, or he's second in the league in passing yards, number one in QBR, second in touchdown passes with 20, only 2 interceptions. Those are MVP numbers. I mean, he almost has as many touchdown passes right now, 9 games into the season, as he did over 16 games last year. And that's when I was saying that last year, they're like, "Oh, you're a hater. You're a hater." I'm not no hater. I just know what MVP numbers look like, and he has them. These are MVP numbers. He has 20 touchdown passes 9 games into the season. He had 24 last year, the whole season. And that's this. He's running away with MVP. And has Jared Goff played an amazing and winning football and done a phenomenal job? No question about it. But he's going to have to throw for more touchdowns. He's going to have to throw for more yards if he wants to get in this conversation. Now, if he's holding a trophy at the end, I don't think he cares, Mitchell. But if we're talking about the MVP conversation, he's got to get some more numbers.
I'm with you. And let's talk about Baltimore a little bit, because this was that measuring stick game, I think, for the Denver Broncos, and they go on the road into Baltimore and they get shellacked. I don't know if any other word's going to exemplify their showing, losing by 31 points on the road. And Baltimore, I mean, for them, this goes to show they're a team, they're a force to be reckoned with in this AFC. And I know their kryptonite is the Kansas City Chiefs. I know everyone's kryptonite in the AFC is Patrick Mahomes. You know, Richard, Baltimore looks damn good. I mean, what's the ceiling for this team? Can they get past Patrick Mahomes and this Kansas City Chiefs team? Do you believe in this Baltimore Ravens team right now?
What I believe, and they got two MVP candidates because you look at what Derrick Henry's done. He's got third running back in league history with 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns through 9 games in the football season. The last two won the MVP. It was Sean Alexander and Terrell Davis. And you look at Lamar Jackson. I just talked about him. He had his fourth game with a perfect passer rating, most of any player with 15 plus attempts. He's playing out of his mind right now. I mean, he's playing elite. He's pushing the ball down the field. We talked about his passing numbers. He's running the ball really well. I think he has 505 rush yards as well to go along with his 2,300 or so passing yards. And he's really efficient, Mitchell. He's not turning the ball over at all. He's putting his team in phenomenal positions. They're scoring a ton of points every single week. They look incredibly formidable, but then you look up and you're like, wait, they lost to the Browns and the Raiders? Like, how? Why? You can understand the Kansas City Chiefs lost his first game of the season, a lot of chaos. This is Super Bowl champions. But then you look at the Browns and the Raiders, you're like, hey, I don't know. It leaves a lot for the imagination because now I need to see you against your division. I don't, there are still things I need to see from this team because of those losses. Are they a great team? Has the defense played incredibly? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. To hold the Denver Broncos to 10 points, to score 41 points on this defense that has been amongst the league leaders. Vance Joseph has had these boys hunting all season playing really, really high level defensive football. Bo Nix has had really good games over the past 3 or 4 ball games. And in this game, I mean, he was held to 19 of 33, 223 yards. He had the reception touchdown on the Philly special play, but he's been feeding Cortland Sutton, who had another 100-yard game, but they held him in check, forced him to throw an interception. I mean, they had their way with that defense trying to play man coverage. They could not stop Zay Flowers, 5 catches for 127 and 2 tugs. This team looks to be a very formidable team, but those concerning head scratching losses are the reason I can't put them up, above 3 in my power rankings, because you're losing to teams who just aren't playing great football right now. You lost to Gardner Minshew and you lost to Jameis, who had a really good game, and obviously we saw the chaos at the end, but they just got their butts kicked this week. And so, you think, oh man, they're about to turn it around, but then they didn't. So what they do this week and Thursday night in front of us in Baltimore is really going to give me what I need to see, because the Cincinnati Bengals aren't a great team, but offensively, Joe Burrow just threw for 5 touchdowns. This defense is coming along as they always do around this time in the season. They're 3-1 over their last 4. So you look and you say, okay, Baltimore, is your time. Blow out a division opponent and let us all know, put us all on notice. So if they're able to do that, then they get to say that. Now I still need them to do more.
No question. I know you got to be fired up to be going to Baltimore on Thursday, Richard. It's going to be a huge game, and it's going to be another huge opportunity for Lamar Jackson